wanted a big introduction to tell you when to start talking. And you shall receive.
You are listening to A Scary State, and this week it's Lauren's birthday.
My birthday.
So, Lauren.
Yes, Kenzie.
Let's get scary.
And we're recording on my actual birthday.
Yeah. Happy birthday, buddy.
Thank you.
Tell the listeners what we did.
Okay, so yesterday we did an escape room, and it was cryptid themed.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a ton of cryptids all over the place, which was awesome. We did amazing, and we got out with 32 seconds to spare.
Yes, we did.
That was so close.
It was a true test of friendship.
It was so funny. At the end, we knew we were running out of time, and as everyone's finding things, everyone's screaming and yelling as we're running to put things into the places.
I'm over by the ice cream thingy, and you're like, Sully!
Mackenzie needed 5 letters, and we told her the name, which was Sully.
It just didn't seem like Sully would
And
be
Mackenzie
5
goes,
letters.
I need 5 letters! And we all at the same time yelled at her, it is 5 letters!
And I still counted.
I know. We could have gotten out in 45 seconds, but you had to count.
I don't know why, but there's some words in my head that, to me, yes, obviously 5 letters. I get it. But it just doesn't make sense. It should be 4.
So how would you spell Sully? With 1 L?
No, with 2 and a Y. Oh, I know. But it's just, that's how my brain works. Okay. I honestly can't explain it. Because I tried to do this the other day with one of my coworkers where I tried to explain why a word was like another word. And she was like, no. And I was like, see, but that's just how my brain works.
Thankfully, it didn't slow us down too much.
Yeah.
And it got us out.
Divide and conquer.
With 32 seconds to spare.
Yeah.
I wonder how you could get through some of these rooms. Some people do it by themselves.
Yeah, that's because we got to a certain point where we knew we needed to open something in order to get something else open.
Yeah.
But we didn't necessarily know what we needed to open.
Right.
So to know that, I'm sure there's an order.
Yeah.
You're supposed to open things, more or less.
But there are also I think some places need at least 2 people. Because one of the rooms that we did last time, it was a magician themed room.
Mm-hmm.
You had to be on one side of the wall touching something while something else lit up on the other side of the wall.
Well,
you needed someone to see the other side as you were touching stuff.
One of the first things we did with the lights.
Yeah, you needed 2 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's why this place recommends 2 to 10.
Probably.
I feel 10 would be way too many people.
Yeah, you'd have to have
because we had 6, and I think 6 was a perfect number.
How many do we typically have? 1, 2, 3, 4.
What, when you go with your family?
5, 6, 7. Usually have 7.
Yeah.
7 or 8.
I feel 6 to 7 is the perfect number.
Yeah. And we, when we first did it, we all went as a family, but we split up into groups because there was a lot of us.
Yeah.
So we didn't get through that one. But then my sister and I did it, and we got through it.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we had a lot of fun. We came back to the house. We played games, which was also very fun.
Yes. We dominated in those games too, might I add. I said, might I add?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And then I was going to say something else, but I can't remember what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. Okay. Listen to this. Okay, y'all. So Mackenzie likes to say that...
I don't think this was a scary movie.
It's not. Okay. So here's the thing.
It was an action-packed movie with some creepy people.
Oh, no. I was going to talk about the thing on my computer.
Oh.
No. Okay. We'll go over the movie first. Mackenzie watched a scary movie.
No, I didn't.
It was an action-packed movie.
It was an action movie.
It was called The Gorge. And we won't give it away if people haven't watched it yet because it is still relatively new.
Miles Teller helped.
Miles Teller was in it. And, what's her name? Something
Anna
Taylor-Joy.
Something.
Anna Taylor-Joy.
She was in the Queen's Gambit.
Yeah, her. So they're in the movie together. And there's action and suspense and kind of creepy stuff going on. But Mackenzie watched the whole thing, only covered her eyes 3 times.
And that was only because I knew something was going to pop out.
There were a couple pop-out things, but not bad pop-out things.
Yeah, because I covered my eyes.
Oh, my God. Even for me not covering my eyes, there was no, creepy pop-out things.
Anything that pops out is a problem.
Okay, then yeah, you probably close your eyes at the good spots then.
Yes.
But it was really good.
When they were in that one place, when they were down there, and I'm something's going to happen, and it's not happening fast enough. what my mistake was is I was like, really just wait for it to go silent. That's the telltale
That's
sign.
always when something pops out.
And so I just waited, and then I had my blanket and I put it over my head and covered my ears. And the TV was loud enough that I could hear when it was like, "Rawr," and I was like, okay, cool, I can watch it now.
Good, I'm good now.
Yeah.
Because there's that one where it was like a long, quiet scene and you were covered the whole time. And you're like, I don't know what's happening. Something's going to happen, but I don't want to watch because I don't want to be
I
scared.
couldn't breathe. I'm so hot under there.
I was just telling you, oh, they're walking. They're walking. Oh, they're looking at
I kept
something. They're
peeking out over
walking.
the blanket. I'm like, I don't want to miss anything, but like, I know something's going to happen soon.
But very proud of you for watching it.
Thanks. That's it. Like,
That's your stepping stone.
no, that's my max.
That's what you think. That's your stepping stone.
Nope.
It all starts somewhere.
That is my
and
maximum.
this is where we're starting.
That is my maximum. Look, when something has like helicopters, military, bang, bang, shoot 'em up, that's an action movie. That's not a scary movie.
Yeah. This was more, I would say, suspenseful.
I would say it's an action movie that has
A
suspenseful moments.
suspenseful action movie.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good, though. Okay. Creepy thing on my computer.
Oh, yeah.
So,
It's a ghost again.
it is. So, I was
This
doing...
one is really good with electronics.
Yes. I was doing whatever, and I was working on my computer. And on the side, over on the right hand or the left-hand side, I have, like, folders. And they're labeled, like, a scary state, work, miscellaneous kind of stuff. So, the other day, I was like doing something and I look at my desktop and it is a picture, like one of my documents or one of my folders has been labeled like a bracket, a comma, and then like a semicolon or whatever.
It's just
So
smiley face.
It looks like a sad face. Like it looks like a sad crying face.
I thought it was a
No.
smiling.
I took a picture. I'll show you. And so I'm like, what is this folder? So I click on it. It's for a scary state. I don't type those things in like succession. You have to actually go and type like right click, rename to rename the folder. Who did it? I asked Joe. He said it wasn't you or him. I accused you. You said it wasn't you.
When have I ever touched your computer?
I don't know. There are times when I get up to go to the bathroom.
If I touched anything, you would make us stop the recording.
No. Yeah.
Start over.
Probably. It looks like a sad crying face.
Oh, yeah. Sad.
And it's so creepy. And I don't know what it's from. And we don't have anyone else who lives in the house other than me and Joe. And you, most of the time, are here too. So I don't know what it is. It's creepy. That's creepy. And I told Joe, and he also agreed that that was pretty creepy.
Is that the ghost telling you that, like,
He's unhappy.
your stories suck?
They don't suck. My stories are awesome.
Well, I don't know. He did a crying face.
I know. I don't know what's going on
No one's fucking with my stuff.
because you don't live here. So maybe the ghost is only doing it to, like, me.
See, now what we've put ourselves into is that you've kind of convinced yourself that that's probably it.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're subconsciously going to be looking for those things
I wasn't subconsciously looking for that one, though. That just popped up on my screen.
to confirm your thinking. What is that called?
Oh, something bias.
Yeah. I thought it was like a fallacy or something.
I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about, and I can't think of the word.
It's okay. We'll just leave the people.
People are probably
screaming
yelling at
right
us.
now, telling us what it is.
See, oh damn it!
I mean, if I'm okay to move on and not know the name, but do you?
I'm
wanna-
not because it's a psychology term,
Do
and
you
I
wanna
should
look it
know
up?
it. Yes, please.
Psych term for what? How do I?
Oh my god!
With how do you even spell fallacy?
It's a. Okay, we're gonna have to move on. I'll look it up when we're on our break.
Wait, hold on. I put psych term for confirming thoughts. Oh, not confirmation bias.
Is it?
No.
No. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, but there's a term that has fallacy with it that is that meaning.
Look up self-fulfilling prophecy and fallacy.
I can't see my delete button around this microphone. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, no.
ready to move on?
Yeah, we're going to have to. Yeah.
All right.
It's not.
Ready to jump into the dark history of my birthday notes?
Yeah, girl. Go
So,
for it.
Keeping with the tradition of exploring the dark history that surrounds whatever state or topic we're covering, Mackenzie has found some dark historical events that happened on my day of birth, which is today, which is the day we're recording, March 2nd.
I was just about to say.
Not the day this comes out.
No.
So during World War II, Italy was under German occupation in the north and Allied control in the south. Food and essential supplies were scarce, leading to widespread black market trading. On March 2nd, 1944, train 8017, a freight train, left Naples bound for Potenza, overloaded with hundreds of stowaways, many of them civilians looking to barter for food and supplies in rural areas. The train, pulled by 2 steam locomotives, encountered difficulties while passing through the Army Tunnel, a long and poorly ventilated tunnel near Bolzano?
Sure.
The combination of heavy loads, steep incline, and poor quality coal, a result of wartime shortages, caused locomotives to stall inside the tunnel. Ugh. With the train trapped, the locomotives continued to emit carbon monoxide, which quickly filled the tunnel. The passengers, stowaways, and even crew members succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning in the confined space. When rescuers arrived, they discovered more than 500 people dead, making it Italy's worst railroad disaster and one of the deadliest train disasters in history.
Woof.
The disaster highlighted the severe conditions in wartime Italy, including poverty, food shortages, and dangerous black market trading. It also exposed safety failures related to overcrowded trains, poor maintenance, and the dangers of operating steam trains in long tunnels without proper ventilation. The Bolzano train disaster was largely suppressed from public attention at the time due to wartime censorship, and its memory remained obscure for decades, though it has since become an important historical episode illustrating the struggles of civilians during World War II.
Facts.
The grave robbery of Charlie Chaplin is one of the most bizarre and infamous cases of celebrity grave theft in history. I didn't know that was a thing at all.
Celebrity grave theft?
No, that it happened to him.
Oh.
And I guess maybe I never really thought about celebrity grave theft, but it makes sense.
Yeah, not something we learned about in U.S. history.
It really should have
or
been.
world history.
I think I would have really enjoyed history if, this is what we learned about.
Yeah, they definitely skipped over some of the good stuff.
Yeah, they really did. After Chaplin passed away on December 25th, oh, that's sad, 1977, he was buried in a small cemetery
Can't
in
help you.
Corsaire-sur-Vevey, Switzerland,
There you go.
near his longtime home. Just a few months later, on March 2nd, 1978, his grave was found disturbed and his coffin missing, shocking his family and fans around the world. The theft was part of a ransom scheme devised by 2 men, Roman Wardus, a Polish immigrant, and Gancho Ganev, a Bulgarian accomplice, who hoped to extort 400,000 pounds,
I think so.
which is around $600,000 at the time, from Chaplin's widow, Ona Chaplin, in exchange for the return of his remains. Over the course of several weeks, the 2 men made threatening phone calls to Ona, believing Chaplin's global fame and wealth could guarantee their payday. However, Swiss authorities launched an intensive investigation, ultimately tracing the ransom calls to a public phone booth and arresting both men. After their confession, Chaplin's coffin was found buried in a nearby cornfield in the village of Noville, about 11 miles from its original resting place. Noville.
Sure.
That sounds like it's not a real place. Where are you from? Noville.
I would bet money that's not how you pronounce it.
It's probably not. Noville.
Yeah.
I like Noville more. The coffin was recovered and reburied in the same cemetery, but this time under a heavy layer of concrete to prevent any future attempts at theft. Wardus was sentenced to 4 years in prison, while Ganev received an 18-month suspended sentence. The crime, though unsettling, became a cautionary tale about the strange schemes that fame and wealth can attract, and it remains one of the most notorious cases of grave robbery in modern history.
Did you know that Charlie Chaplin was shunned from this country because he started getting accusations of being a communist?
Mm-mm.
Because of our freak out in the 1950s. That's why we say the Pledge of Allegiance, by the way. Because, okay, so quick history time. 1950s, Red Scare,
Mm-hmm.
Soviet Russia,
Mm-hmm.
taking over everything, freaking out that everybody's a communist. It's like the Salem witch trials, but with communism.
Okay.
Your neighbor's a communist.
Right.
Your teacher's a communist. Everyone's a commie. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so started saying that Chaplin was. And so I forget what it was that made people think that. But he was shunned, left the country. I don't even think he was allowed back in.
Wow.
But I think his reputation might have been restored later on, before he died. But yeah, because during the Red Scare, everyone was afraid of communism taking over. And so that's when we started saying the Pledge of Allegiance, because they're we're going to make you pledge allegiance to this country and this flag.
Wow.
So stupid.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's dumb.
Wow. I had no idea.
Talk about a freak out.
Yeah. Something that has persisted
Yeah.
for
Because
many, many years.
Guess who led that? A man.
Can't say I'm shocked.
Mm-hmm.
The tornado outbreak of March 2nd and 3rd, 2012 was one of the deadliest and most destructive severe weather events in recent American history.
When I tell you that my one of my biggest fears weather-wise
Is a
is
tornado?
a tornado. Like, I don't even think I could visit the Midwest.
For fear of a tornado.
Yes.
That's how I felt in California the whole time I was there. I'm like, I'm going to be here when the big earthquake hits.
Yeah, no, I didn't even think about that.
More fears. Over the course of 2 days, a powerful storm system swept across the Midwest and southern United States, spawning more than 700. Nope.
No.
Spawning more than 70 confirmed tornadoes. States hit hardest included Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Ohio. I don't picture Ohio as being the Midwest.
I know, same.
Like, I know it's like in that area, but it just doesn't strike me as the Midwest.
Yeah.
With some of the most devastating damage occurring in Henryville, Indiana, where an EF4 tornado tore through the town, leaving schools, homes, and leveling schools, homes, and businesses. Entire communities were flattened, and in some areas, the landscape was left unrecognizable. In total, the outbreak resulted in 41 fatalities and hundreds of injuries, with thousands of structures damaged or destroyed. What made this outbreak particularly terrifying was the combination of its scope, intensity, and the fact that many of the tornadoes were fast-moving and struck with little time for residents to seek shelter.
See?
Yeah, like, they're not things that you can predict.
That's the thing. That's why, not that I was wanting to live in Virginia for the rest of my life, but I cannot think of another place that doesn't have some crazy shit in terms of weather.
Yeah.
You go too far north, you got blizzards. You go too far west, you got tornadoes. You got earthquakes.
Oh, we've talked about all of this many times. It truly is one of our fears.
Right. Like, especially tornadoes, they're better at predicting, but earthquakes?
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah.
That's very scary.
The storms also produced damaging hail, widespread flash flooding, and intense straight-line winds, compounding the devastation.
Being impaled by hail before.
It starts off, you got bumped with hail. Now it's, I was impaled with a piece of hail.
I thought someone threw a rock at me.
That was so funny.
I was so upset. I was like, I can't believe someone just threw a rock in this storm.
I laugh about it all the time because you just went, oh.
I may have been a little intoxicated and things might have been a little dramatized. I was also in a trauma response because my fear as a child was coming true, where I was stuck outside in a thunderstorm.
Yeah, it was all not great. In the aftermath, emergency responders and volunteers from across the country descended on the hard-hit areas to provide aid and began the long process of recovery. The March 2nd to 3rd, 2012 tornado outbreak stands as a grim reminder of the deadly power of nature and the importance of severe weather preparedness across tornado-prone regions of the United States.
And the rest of these are just like little
things that happened on this day.
This day
in history.
I was going to say fun facts, but they're all bad.
Unfun facts.
Yeah.
Infamous facts.
Infamous facts.
On March 2nd, 1836, Texas declared independence from Mexico. While this was a pivotal moment in American history, it set off a brutal chain of events, including the infamous Battle of the Alamo.
Who?
What? Oh. You're so lame. March 6th, 1836. Where almost all Texan defenders were slaughtered and after a brutal siege by Mexican forces. The entire Texas Revolution was a bloody conflict filled with violence, massacres, and war crimes on both sides. On March 2nd, 1995, Philip Lawrence, a head teacher in London, was stabbed to death outside a school while trying to protect a student from a gang attack.
No.
His murder shocked the UK and sparked national conversations about youth violence, gangs, and knife crime in schools. That's sad.
I told you none of these are fun facts.
Though not enacted on March 2nd, it's worth noting that on March 2nd, 1859, a significant group of enslaved people were captured in Missouri under the Fugitive Slave Act, which allowed for the brutal capture and return of escaped enslaved people. This dark legacy of legal human trafficking was a reflection of their cruelty and inhumanity embedded in American law at the time. So bad. Howard Carter, 1939, an archaeologist who discovered King Tut's tomb, passed away on March 2nd. His work, while groundbreaking, was also tied to the supposed Curse of the Pharaohs, a myth that many associated with mysterious deaths and bad luck. I think that those myths of pharaohs and all of that stuff totally could be true.
100%.
Like, you don't mess with something. If something is sealed, like there was this one picture that they were showing. I don't think it was King Tut's grave. It might have been, or his tomb. But it was like really heavy wooden doors. that had like wax guarding the handle, tied in rope with more stuff so you don't open it. And then they're like, oh, I think we should open this. I think we should go in.
I mean, there's a reason why a lot of those places have booby traps.
Right. So you don't go in.
Yeah.
Listen to that.
No.
If there's a pyramid, they have made many like false entrances and false hallways and things. Don't go down them. Don't go in the first place. Let the dead rest.
Yes, I agree with you. But as someone who enjoys history, the only way we know about those things is from those kinds of discoveries.
I know. I get it.
However, this day and age,
there we go.
Learning from our past and that just don't fuck with the dead.
Yes.
I have no doubt in my mind that there is someone out there that can take the capabilities of X-rays and MRIs, put them in a drone, fly it around.
Fly the drone in. That's so smart.
And we can figure out all that kind of stuff without having to disturb anything.
I like that. I like that much more.
Because the other problem too, which I think they ran into with King Tut, maybe it was a different one, but when all that stuff is now unearthed, unless you got some baller security, lots of people are going to go in there and take it.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's respect the dead and have our questions answered.
With a drone.
With a drone.
I like that much more.
Thank you. I thought it was a good idea too. I don't have the science, money, or ability.
Same. Or knowledge.
But I can come up with a really good idea as long as someone else can execute it.
I was thinking of that the other day. Like when people come up with like these things that haven't been thought of before, where do you start? Like where do you start to build something?
Well, if you personally don't know how to build it, you'd have to find someone you think could build it and bring the idea to them.
Right. It's wild.
And then you'd have to bring them in on it. Like, for example, so the guy who created chapstick, that's from Virginia.
Oh.
Fun fact. Thank you so much for looking at the Instagram posts.
I did, but I don't remember things easily.
So because I get very, very nervous that whatever I'm going to put into our pictures is not what it actually is, I always double check. So like I'll see the picture, I'll click on the website and read to make sure that whatever I'm going to say the picture is actually that picture.
Right.
So, I fact check myself.
Good.
Like a
responsible researcher.
Thank you. And this chapstick guy, he had come up with it in like 1890. Came up with the formula, was able to make it, all that kind of stuff. But he's not a salesman. He is not good at that. So he went to a buddy of his. He's like, hey man, you're a good business guy. You want to get in on this and help me sell this thing? And he did. And now we have chapstick.
Oh, thank God. I always have my chapstick with me.
And it's like the chapstick, like chapstick brand chapstick. Do you ever think about, this is so random and you might have to stop me. Do you ever think about the things that are brand names that we use as the name?
Kleenex.
Chapstick. Velcro.
That was the other one, Velcro.
Ziploc. Tupperware.
Yeah, it's so weird.
It's crazy.
Good on them.
Yeah. And like, I didn't realize it for the longest time. I was like, no, that's the thing. No. That's the name. That's why when you're typing Velcro in and you're just talking about a thing, it makes you capitalize the V.
Wild.
So crazy. People are weird. I don't know. Just as a society, humans are just odd.
We are. All right, Mackenzie, what tale do you have for me on my birthday?
There's something about the deep woods.
Oh, yes.
The way the trees seem to close in around you. The quiet that feels just a little too quiet. The sense that you're not alone, even when there's no one in sight.
Oh, wait, let me get all cozy for this.
Okay.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm so excited. Okay, go.
For centuries, those who ventured into the most remote corners of America's national forests have returned with unsettling stories.
Oh, yes. I love this so much. Okay.
And at the heart of many of these tales is the same whispered warning. Beware the wild men.
Ooh. Always beware wild men.
Well, yeah. The origins of the wild man trace back thousands of years, appearing across cultures and continents. Some of the earliest known references come from ancient Mesopotamia, where the character of Enkidu from the Epic of Gilgamesh embodied the archetype. Enkidu was a hairy, untamed man who lived among animals before being introduced to human society.
Kind of like Tarzan?
Sure.
Okay.
The tensions between the wild and the civilized world would become a recurring theme in later legends. In early European pagan traditions, dense forests were believed to be inhabited by wild humanoid beings that blurred the line between man and beast, representing both danger and mystery. These beings symbolize the wilderness itself, a realm outside the reach of human control. By the Middle Ages, the wild man had become a familiar figure in European folklore, art, and literature. Depicted as a large, hairy man covered in fur living in remote forests or mountains, the wild man was both feared and romanticized. He was often a symbol of primal strength and freedom, but also of savage violence. In medieval court festivals, wild men appeared as both exotic curiosities and cautionary tales, like Tarzan, representing the thin boundary between civilization and chaos. This duality, the wild man as both a noble figure and a dangerous threat, was central to how he was perceived throughout European history. The wild man archetype is by no means limited to Europe. Cultures around the world have their versions, from Sasquatch and Bigfoot in North America to the Yeti of the Himalayas, the orange pendek of Southeast Asia, and the almas of the Caucasus Mountains.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Indigenous traditions in Australia, South America, and Africa also include stories of hairy human-like beings that dwell in the wilderness. The global legends share common themes. Creatures that exist on the edge of the human world, straddling the line between human and animal, spirit and flesh. Whether seen as protectors of nature, dangerous predators, or supernatural beings, wild men occupy a space both familiar and alien. The symbolism of the wild man is deeply tied to humanity's evolving relationship with nature. He represents our primal, untamed past, the instincts and wilderness we have tried to leave behind in the pursuit of civilization. At the time, the wild man can embody freedom from societal constraints, living unbound by laws or cultural norms. In some traditions, wild men act as guardians of the natural world, while others, they are monsters lurking just beyond the edges of the village, waiting to strike. This flexibility has allowed the figure to persist, adapting to the fears and desires of each new generation. In modern times, the wild man legend has found new life in the realm of cryptozoology. Creatures like Bigfoot and the Yeti are sometimes framed as possible relic homonyms.
Yeah.
Surviving offshoots of the human evolutionary tree, such as Neanderthals or Denisovians, who somehow avoided extinction.
Okay.
And is your family part Neanderthal?
Yeah.
Oh, so true.
But rude. But one of
I
the...
said part Neanderthal,
And then you said so true.
meaning part of your family.
Oh. Apparently, though, it said people who have higher percentages of Neanderthal than others were able to handle COVID better. Or something with some related...
Like as in not getting it?
as
or
in not getting it as
psychologically?
bad. Which, I mean, I've only had it once, and that one time, I felt fine.
But wasn't that also after the vaccine had come out?
Yes, which I also think was very helpful as well.
Well,
Because I had gotten the booster, and Joe hadn't gotten the booster yet, because, like, my work had offered it a little bit earlier than others did.
yeah.
And so I got the booster. Joe didn't. He was, like,
Miserable.
dead for 3 days.
Well, he didn't have Neanderthal in him.
He didn't have Neanderthal or the booster in him.
So really,
I had the double Neanderthal and the booster.
So you were fine. You were
I
right.
was fine.
You were right as rain.
I just had, like, a slight runny nose, which that's normal for me,
Right.
and a headache.
Yeah.
And Joe was, like, dying on the couch. I was like, you know, it's like the poking with a stick. You okay? But it was
That's
actually
funny.
so nice that both of us had it, because then
same
we didn't
time,
have to
yeah.
quarantine.
Yeah.
Because when he got it the second time, he got it on his birthday. And so I quarantined him to the guest room. And then I would, like, make him food and I would put it outside. And then I would back up and he would open the door and take the food into the room.
That's so depressing.
It was so sad. And thankfully, like, when him and I got it the first time, it was like when he had to quarantine for 10 days. So it was fine. When he got it, he had to quarantine for 5 in the room by himself. I was like, I'm so sorry. But I didn't have the PTO to get it as well.
God, what an American statement.
I know. It's so awful.
Others interpret the wild man as a kind of cultural memory, a reflection of early human life passed down through oral tradition, gradually morphing into myth. Whether seen through the lens of folklore, anthropology, or cryptid hunting, the wild man remains an universal archetype tapping into deep human fears, desires, and the ever-present mystery of the wilderness. So, wild men in America.
Mhm.
Across the country, in places like the Great Smoky Mountains, the Daniel Boone National Forest, and the rugged backcountry of the Pacific Northwest, there are stories of feral humans. People who have abandoned society entirely, living off the land far beyond the reach of modern civilization.
Honestly, I get it.
Some say these aren't just hermits or survivalists. They're something older,
Mm.
something primal. Hikers tell of hearing strange noises at night, not of the usual calls of owls or rustling deer, but deep guttural growls or eerie sound of something mimicking human speech just beyond the tree line.
I hate anything with the mimicking.
Yeah.
The mimicking is no.
There's a bird that does that.
Yes.
There's kind of a few birds that do that.
I don't like it.
Yeah, it's not nice. There's this one bird that does it and like takes over a nest and it looks like the other baby birds, but it's a little bit bigger. Because it's a little bit bigger, it gets like fed more and then the other babies die.
Oh no.
Yeah. Campers wake up to the feeling of being watched, only to find bare footprints circling their tents. Hunters have returned with stories of being followed, their every step matched by a silent figure moving just out of sight. And in some cases, the stories take a darker turn. The tales of campsites torn apart, gear stolen or shredded, and in rare cases, people who disappear without a trace.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't have anyone that technically fully disappears.
That's okay.
Okay.
I covered it on one of our last episodes.
Yeah, like these people are eventually found.
Oh no.
Sorry. Alive.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
The legends of wild men aren't new. Early settlers brought European tales of woodland savages, half man, half beast creatures who lived on the edges of civilization. Indigenous tribes too have their own stories of hairy human-like beings who stalk the forest, sometimes protectors, sometimes predators. Over time, those legends merged and evolved into what we hear today. Rumors of pharaoh families, whole clans of people who have lived in total isolation for generations.
Oh my gosh.
Their language and customs long forgotten, their instinct for survival sharpening into something brutal. Some of these stories overlap with Bigfoot sightings, leading some to wonder, could the legend of Sasquatch actually be rooted in encounters with wild, off-grid humans, their bodies caked in mud and hair, their movements so inhumane after decades of life in the wilderness that they've become something else entirely?
Ooh.
Others believe the wild men are something more supernatural, guardians of the forest, cursed beings, or even echoes of something ancient that was here long before the forest themselves. But maybe the scariest possibility is that the wild men are just us. People who, for one reason or another, walked away from the world we know, maybe to escape, maybe to hide, maybe because they simply couldn't exist within the rules of society anymore. And out there in the dark silence of the forest, they became something else. Not quite animal, not quite human.
Maybe it's like some of the stories where we do have the person who disappears and there's no trace found.
That's what I'm thinking.
You know? So
Yeah.
like you find a body, obviously, but when there's nothing found,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
maybe they're still alive.
So I have a couple of stories from our friend who's not a friend, but could be a friend, Mr. Ballin.
We'd love if he were a friend.
Right. This one is from a video called Feral People Hunt Teen Hiker.
Oh God. Oh my God. I'm so excited. Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. It was the summer of 2008, and 19-year-old Stephen Kubaki was looking for a little peace, some time to escape the chaos of his everyday life. A lover of the outdoors, Stephen decided to spend a few days hiking through the lush, isolated forest in the Pacific Northwest, California specifically.
Okay.
I think there's like some California trail,
Oh, there is. Is it the Pacific Rim Trail?
something like that.
Something. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what he wanted to do. He was inspired by the movie Into the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was like, ooh, want to be that guy.
Ugh, no. But okay. You do you, boo.
The area was remote, miles of dense trees, winding trails, and the eerie quiet that can only be found deep in the woods.
Yep.
Stephen had plenty of experience hiking alone, so he wasn't concerned when he parked his car at the trailhead and set off into the wilderness with nothing but a backpack and a plan to spend the night under the stars.
How many nights was he planning on doing? Just one?
No, I think for like a while. Like he was going to hike.
Oh, he was going to hike the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I think he flew there to start
Oh, wow.
or something like that.
Okay.
But as the sun dipped below the trees and the sky darkened, Stephen's peaceful getaway took a terrifying turn, one that would haunt him for the rest of his life.
Ugh.
That first evening, Stephen found a clearing to set up camp. He built a small fire and sat beside it, enjoying the silence. But as the flames flickered and shadows stretched long into the forest, he got the distinct feeling that he wasn't alone.
Ew, I hate that. Oh, God.
At first, it was subtle, the occasional crack of a branch, the rustle of leaves. Normal forest sounds, or so he thought. But then the noises grew louder, purposeful. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling his camp.
Mm-mm.
Stephen called out, expecting maybe another hiker had stumbled upon his campsite, but no one responded.
I think the first thing I would think if I were in the woods by myself, which I wouldn't be, but I think what I would think first, instead of like, oh, there's a human walking around, I would think it was like a puma or like a bobcat or some kind of like big animal that was hunting me.
But they wouldn't make noise like footsteps.
But that's what my brain would want to rationalize
Ah,
as.
got it.
Because I feel like an animal in the woods is less scary than another human in the woods.
Yeah.
Why we choose the bear over the man kind of thing.
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
The footsteps stopped, leaving only the cackling fire and the sound of his own breath. Unnerved but determined not to panic, Stephen convinced himself it was probably an animal, maybe a deer, and crawled into his tent for the night. But sleep didn't come easily. All night long, he heard movement just beyond his tent, like something or someone was out there, watching. By morning, these noises were gone, and the forest felt normal again. Stephen shook off the unease and continued his hike deeper into the woods, determined to enjoy his trip. But as he trekked along the narrow trail, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following him. Every so often, he glanced over his shoulder, catching glimpses of movement, a shadow darting behind a tree, a faint sound of branches snapping. The following night, things escalated. Stephen set up camp again, but this time, the sense of being watched was overwhelming. As darkness fell, the footsteps returned. Closer now. Circling. Lingering. Stephen's flashlight swept across the trees, but nothing was there. Then, just as he was convincing himself it was his imagination, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. It echoed through the trees, high-pitched, human, but distorted, like someone screaming through clenched teeth. Stephen froze, his heart pounding in his chest. It came again, closer this time. And then, more footsteps.
Oh, God.
Running footsteps.
That is creepy.
Something was out there, and it wasn't alone. Terrified, Stephen grabbed his gear and bolted into the night, crashing through the underbrush in a blind panic. Whatever was out there, whatever was stalking him, was now chasing him. He could hear them running, their footsteps closing in, matching his every desperate move. But no matter how fast he ran, he couldn't see them. They were just outside the beam of his flashlight, moving through the trees with an unnatural speed and silence.
What's also scary about that is, like, what if you're running into the woods to where you're going to get lost?
Stephen ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave out, eventually stumbling into a dirt road.
Oh.
He got lucky.
Yeah.
Exhausted, panicked, and covered in scratches, he followed the road until he found help. When he told his story of the footsteps, the scream, and the unseen figures hunting him, few believed him. They said it was just paranoia, the isolation of the forest playing tricks on his mind. But Stephen knew better.
Yeah, he did.
Something was out there, something feral, something human, or at least something that used to be. Stephen's story is just one of the many whispered tales from the remote forests of North America. Stories of feral people, wild humans who live off the land, cut off from society, and fiercely territorial. Whether they were born in the wilderness or choose to disappear into it, no one knows for sure. But one thing is certain, Stephen isn't the only one who crossed paths with them. To this day, Stephen refuses to hike alone. Smart. When he tells his story, the fear in his eyes is impossible to ignore. Because sometimes the most dangerous predators aren't the ones you can see. They're the ones just beyond the light, waiting.
Ew.
So I have another story.
Oh, yeah.
It's about a girl named Eloise Lindsay.
Oh, pretty.
So in 1989, she was 22 years old, and she was a fresh college graduate. And she was kind of in this weird, like, in-between in her life. She had just earned her degree, but she didn't really know what she wanted to do.
Girl, I feel that.
Yeah. She was an experienced backpacker and thought a good way to get her life together was kind of like a retreat.
In the woods.
Go out into the woods, go into nature, kind of find herself.
See, no.
So she planned this very detailed 43.3-mile hike along the Appalachian Trail.
Does she not know the stories?
She's about to. Starting in South Carolina, where the first 7 days of the hike she would be totally on her own. But then the 7-day mark, she would be meeting up with a friend at like a specific point.
How long was she planning? I get the 43 miles, but how many days is she thinking this is going to take?
November sometime. So a few months.
Okay.
Is what it looks like. On the 7-day mark, she'd meet up with her friend, and her friend would give her resupplies and would then accompany her for the rest of the hike.
Oh, okay.
So she was really only alone for like a week.
A week.
Out of whatever.
Which is still a long time.
She told her parents her plans, but they weren't concerned because she's experienced. She's had many hikes like this or many trips like this before. And she was like, they're like, great. See you when you get back in November.
Okay. Too lenient.
So she sets out on her journey down the Appalachian Trail. First couple of days of her hike, great weather, beautiful scenery, having a great time by herself. You know, thinking, which to me, I don't understand how that could possibly be enjoyable because if anything, I try to run away from my brain.
Okay. Maybe this is the retreat you need to really get in touch with your brain.
No, we're in touch. Believe me.
Maybe too in touch.
Too in touch. On the third day, when she was sleeping inside of her tent and she had camped just off the trail and she woke and she had this intense feeling of dread.
Mm-hmm.
She couldn't really place where was coming from, but she knew that something was wrong. And so she's kind of doing an inventory on her life. What did I forget? Is there something I'm just not thinking of, I'm not thinking about right now?
Right.
Pushes it aside mentally and thinks, you know what? I'm just going to pack up my campsite and get hiking. I'm sure I'll figure it out. So she gets out of her tent, packs up her site, and she's kind of looking around, scanning the tree line. She's not really looking for anything, but she just happened to be like looking out,
Mm-hmm.
and she could have sworn she saw a man standing maybe 30, 40 feet away behind a tree, kind of does a double take and was staring at him. And it's broad daylight. It's the morning. They're near the trail. So like she can see him.
Yuck. And I get, like, it's a trail.
Right.
Like, there are going to be other people there, but you don't expect to see other people there.
Right.
Because, like, when Jared and I hiked the Appalachian Trail.
Every fucking story I read, I always thought of you guys.
But we didn't see a single person. Which was creepy. Because the first time we saw someone as we were walking down to the trail center, we were like, thank God, a human. Oh my God. And we were only there for like 5 miles.
Right. So for like this, because she was near the trail, it wasn't like completely unbelievable to like see someone. Like she wasn't like, oh, that's weird.
But unsettling.
Yes. So she did kind of a double take. And then when she looked at them again, the person was gone.
Okay, see, I don't like that.
Yeah. So she kind of stood there for a minute, looking in the direction of where she'd seen him, kind of wondering, is my mind playing tricks on me? Did I really see this person?
Yeah.
And wasn't really sure why they weren't showing themselves again. If it was just someone else, like why they wouldn't like say hello or whatever.
Yeah. Honestly, you would think on a trail, people are pretty friendly.
Right. Exactly. That's kind of like what she's thinking.
Yeah.
So she's kind of standing there wondering what she should do. She isn't ready to yell out to this person because there's a part of her that's also like a little bit nervous, like yelling out to a stranger in the middle of the woods.
Yes.
So she starts to get this
nonetheless.
Right. So she starts to get this really intense feeling that she's being watched, and it feels an awful like the sense of dread that she had when she was sitting in the tent.
Mm-mm.
And she's starting to wonder, is this my instincts, a sixth sense picking up, like that I am being watched, like a predator or something like that watching me right now? She really doesn't have any way of knowing if it's actually true that she's alone in the middle of the woods.
Right.
Even though she's experienced, she can't really help feel vulnerable because this guy is just not showing himself again, and she feels a little bit threatened.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of begins to panic, and she starts packing up all of her stuff as quickly as she can. And as soon as she takes off down the trail away from the guy she saw in the woods, as she's walking down this trail, she couldn't help but think someone was right behind her.
Ooh,
She kept turning around to see if this person, whoever it was behind her, and no one was ever there. But this visceral feeling of being, she could not shake that she's being watched.
And your body knows. Like,
Right.
you're, like, even if you don't know why you're acting this way, there's that part of your body that knows that there's something going on.
And it doesn't help that, like, she saw a person.
Right. And now
then
you're not seeing him again.
Right. The person just randomly disappears, doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
It's hard not to have that feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
So she had this sense of dread that's not going away. She starts to walk faster. And before she knows it, she's running.
Yeah.
Booking it down the trail.
And she had all of her stuff on her at that time, right? Okay.
And she's realizing she's in a section of the trail that's like very remote.
Oh, God.
She's not really near civilization.
I hate that.
And she's not near her next like rendezvous point with her friend.
Right.
And so she's really thinking to herself, like, I need to get off this trail. I need to get to a road away from here as soon as I can. And so her options were to either continue on the trail for several miles, and it would probably take her well into the night before she reached civilization. Or she could take a shortcut that she believed that there was a road running parallel to the trail.
Why does she believe this? Does she have like a map? Oh, God. Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
But it was like down the mountain and would require leaving the trail and basically cutting through the wilderness to get there.
See, no.
Yeah. But she was pretty confident it was right down there. And because of the threat of this person, possibly following her was so intense, she decided to leave the trail. Like, she couldn't stand the idea of spending another night out in the middle of the woods with this person, like, stalking her.
Like how comfortable my brother was that the parking lot was just 12 minutes away.
Yep.
Yeah.
So she walks at the trail and starts, like, running down the mountain. It wasn't long before she started to hear audible sounds coming from what she believed to be this person that was following her.
No.
She would turn around and there'd be no one there. And then she'd start walking again, trying to listen as she walked. She could hear footsteps far away from her. And
that's so creepy.
And when she turned, there'd be nobody there, but she was certain someone was following her. The sounds were coming out of this person, this animal, whatever it was. They sounded like a deep male voice, but you couldn't recognize what it was. A language of some kind that just sounded like a grunt or a yell. So she's freaking out.
Yeah.
walking as fast as she can just through the middle of the wilderness, hoping she's walking towards the supposed road. After walking and running for miles into the middle of nowhere, she's not come to the road. And now it's completely dark, and
Oh,
she's noticed she's
no.
lost, and she has to set up camp in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, my God.
So she's out in the middle of nowhere, and possibly this some person or thing is possibly stalking her. She's all alone, no way to contact anyone. It's 1989.
Oh.
Even if she had a cell phone, I doubt she had service.
Right. You don't have service out
Right.
there.
So she sets up her campsite, gets in her tent, zips it up, and laying there hoping she doesn't hear any sounds. But sure enough, within a few minutes of being inside the tent, she starts hearing those audible sounds coming from somewhere in the forest.
Uh-huh.
And she hears like heavy footsteps walking around the perimeter of her campsite.
No.
All night long she hears this. But
No.
luckily they didn't come up like into the tent or anything. So there's some separation between her and whatever is making those sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Sun comes up, she's out of the tent, packs it up, continues running in the direction she hopes is the road. And of course, all day long, she has a sense that someone is watching her, hearing footsteps coming from behind her. She would turn around, didn't see anything. She would hear audible grunting, a sound, that low voice coming from somewhere behind her. But again, she would never see whoever or whatever it was making the sound.
Mm-hmm.
Then the sun is starting to set, and she has not found the road. She has not found the trail. And she's thinking to herself, I can't even backtrack because if I turn around and start walking backwards, I'm bound to run into this thing.
Right.
So she starts to set up her camp again in the middle of nowhere, gets inside, and as soon as she's laying in her tent, she starts to hear the heavy footsteps.
Oh, my God.
Somewhere out in the woods, kind of walking the perimeter of her campsite, she's hearing that low audible sound that she can't quite place, and at some point she falls asleep. Next morning, she gets up, she jumps out of her tent, packs it up, and starts running, hopefully in the direction that will bring her to civilization.
Oh, my God, girl.
A couple days later, when Eloise was supposed to meet her friend on the trail at the 7-day mark, and they were going to finish the hike together, she doesn't show up.
Oh, no.
After several hours when Eloise did not show up, her friend left the trail and contacted authorities, filed a missing person report.
Right.
The police launched this massive search for Eloise along the stretch of the Appalachian Trail where she said she would be. And for the next 14 days, hundreds of police and volunteers, helicopters, searched in the area, no sign of her.
Oh, my God.
And so for 14 days from the time her friend filed the missing person report, police had to turn the search off and say, hey, man, like, we can't find her.
Jeez.
2 days after the search was terminated, so 23 days since Eloise left
Mm-hmm.
and initially set off her search. So pretty much 3 weeks.
Yeah.
A hunter that was out in the middle of nowhere near the Appalachian Trail discovers Eloise perched up against the tree. She's totally emaciated, dehydrated, delirious, but alive.
Oh, my gosh.
At first, of course, she's terrified of this hunter. 'Cause
Yeah.
she's like, oh, this is the person that's been stalking me.
Mm-hmm.
But then she eventually realizes, like, no, he's actually there to help me. Brings her back, brought to the hospital, checked out. And besides being dehydrated and emaciated, like, she was okay.
Wow.
She would detail multiple interviews and her official statement that she had been chased for the past almost 3 weeks in
Oh
the middle
my
of the
gosh.
woods. She doesn't know who it was or why they were chasing her. And then interestingly, this part is fucking crazy. Interestingly, she said right before she was found, so like a couple days before this hunter finds her, this person, this thing, whatever it was, got so close to her a couple of different times, and she was so scared that she ditched her backpack that contained like all of her shit.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Food, water, camp stuff, everything. So she could run faster
Oh, my gosh.
from this thing like chasing in the woods. And Mr. Ballin, his point is like, you got to imagine if you're that fearful that like you're willing to dump your things
Uh-huh.
to
preserve.
survive.
Yeah.
Like that's got to mean something.
Yes.
So she runs for some distance, doesn't have any supplies, no food, no water, and she stumbles across this tree in the middle of nowhere. And wedged inside the tree is a cache of donuts and pound cake. And so she takes the donuts and pound cake, and between that and the stream water that she's found is what kept her alive the last few days before she was found.
What?
Isn't that wild?
What? Ew, that gave me chills.
Right?
Ew.
That's so creepy.
Ew, I don't like that at all.
I know. She has no idea what to make of her experience. Law enforcement were baffled by it, and some people think that she just had like a mental breakdown and that she kind of like made the whole thing up
Right.
in her head, but really she was just lost in the woods and freaking out. Not that anyone was like actually chasing her.
Oh, my gosh.
But other people, including park rangers
Oh, yes,
that
park
work that
rangers.
stretch of the Appalachian Trail, believe that she could possibly have been stalked by wild men, which are basically people that live out in the mountains that are effectively feral, that live off the land, and they've been known, according to legend, to attack park rangers and people that live out in that area and have claimed to have seen these wild men. And they kind of match the description of what she was describing. But as of right now, there's no official explanation of to what happened with her.
They've attacked park rangers?
Yeah.
Oh,
I watched like one YouTube video that it was like someone had written in and he was a former park ranger
ugh.
and he like talked about like his experience and when he was first working like his boss and whatnot and then like his mentor or whatever
Mhm.
like kind of like brought him out and we're like, hey, we're gonna tell you something, but like we never had this conversation, and is like talking about these people that like are out there. And I was half listening because I was at work. And so I know that like he had some sort of encounter of some kind. But I do have some Reddit posts and comments on like, anyone got any stories?
Have you ever read the story about the guy who was a park ranger and he talks about like what he's seen in the woods? So it's like a long, long, long thread. I read it every like year or two.
Yeah.
He talks about like weird things he's seen in the woods. He talks about the staircases in the woods.
Mm.
Have you ever read his story?
Mm-mm.
Okay. When I was like doing research for this episode, because I don't think we ever said this. This is an episode of things that I like. So I said either things creepy in the woods or things creepy in the water. So Mackenzie covered woods. But so I found his story when I was looking for what I wanted to cover.
Mhm.
I'll send it to you and I'll probably read it myself. I read it every couple years.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Okay.
It's so creepy. It's so good.
Okay. So these are just like, I think people probably also put some like threads, like link to threads, because there's like a whole bunch of these.
Oh, yes.
But these were like the three that like I thought were interesting
Okay.
or kind of funny.
Okay.
All right. So this is from Idiot Hotel. And they said, big camping trip in Western North Carolina, Appalachia.
Cramping trip.
Is that what I said?
Yeah.
My bad. Camping. In Western North Carolina, Appalachia, circa 2007-ish.
Oh.
A group of maybe 5 or so of us kids, all around 7 to 10 years old, decided to go play around the waterfall/little river and woods at our campsite. Not abnormal activities for us back then. Parents weren't concerned if we were out of sight playing around the camp. Well, we wandered way far into the thick woods and got ourselves 100% lost.
Oh no.
Couldn't even find the river again to follow it back to the campsite. We started following old campfires further back into the woods, but there was no discernible campsites nearby. As the day wore on, we were getting more and more freaked out, realizing how lost we were without food, water, or shelter, and they're all children.
Yeah, 7 to 10.
Eventually, we were all gathered in a circle trying to decide what to do when an old man approaches us out of nowhere. Literally appears out of the woods and walks up to us. I don't recall what specifically was said. I do remember how wary we were and how we all got a weird feeling immediately. But he ultimately shepherded us back and got us to a familiar stretch of the river so we could get to our camp. He didn't have a gun and wasn't in camo. He was dressed in a flannel and overalls, so I don't believe he was a hunter. He didn't even have a backpack or anything. Just an old man up in Appalachia who happened upon a gaggle of lost children in the middle of the woods and guided them to safety. So it all turned out rosy. Yes, we all got in trouble when the tipsy parents realized how long we had gone, that we got lost, and then found by a mysterious mountain man. But to this day, the memory gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Have you ever heard of third person syndrome?
Mm,
It's usually
Elmo?
Elmo?
He talks in third person.
No. There's stories of when people are in like life or death situations and they're like really not doing well, some person will come up and help them with whatever they need. And it's called third person syndrome because it's supposed to be like this guy had it happen to him when he was hiking in the woods. Like he was on a mountain trip with like some other guy, and this other person came and joined their like trip, and this guy helped them get through this really, really hard part of the trip and then just vanished. And no one else remembers this guy except the one person. So it's believed that it's like this third person who comes and helps you.
But it's really your mind?
It could be, but people don't know. So it's called the third man syndrome or third man
Interesting.
something.
Yeah.
So that's what this sounds like. It sounds like where they were in a situation where they were not doing well and it could have ended badly. This third person comes up and kind of helps them.
Yeah, I mean, and they were all kids too, so that
Right.
doesn't help with like the memory.
Because, yeah, I've heard a lot of, we should go into that one episode, but it's so creepy. It's
Okay.
so cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So this is Philosofood.
Okay.
They said, I live in the heart of the largest ponderosa pine forest in the world. This makes for a beautiful, albeit rugged wilderness that can shift from pleasant to dangerous, empty to heavily populated in the blink of an eye. Phoenix and Flagstaff are separated by 100 or so miles of pretty isolated backwoods driving. There's one stretch between communities where there aren't homes or residential areas at all for about 50 of those miles. This is a national forest for outdoor recreation. The only buildings are ranger stations and one space observatory that is pretty far back into the forest. The observatory has many weird legends about it, like being privately owned by the Vatican, which there is some evidence for, which this person talks about things. I'm like, pin in that, come back into it later.
Interesting.
My mom was driving between townships in this very isolated span of woodland when she came upon a boy walking down the road. He looked maybe 15. My mom doesn't stop for people as a general rule. Smart woman.
Very smart.
But she turned around and decided to help the kid out, which there's a Criminal Minds episode where this teen is hiking along and, because he's a kid,
Mm-hmm.
they pick him up. Turns out he's cooking for Cocoa Puffs because he's a serial killer.
Oh, yep.
So kids can be dangerous too.
Oh, yeah. Killer kids.
Yeah. Well, and it's also a teenager. Everyone should listen to My Chemical Romance. Teenager. They scare the shit out of me. They could care less as long as someone will bleed.
Exactly.
They'll darken their clothes. Strike up a violent nose?
Or pose.
Pose?
They do
Probably
something violently.
Yeah. And leave you alone, but not me.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully the right people got that.
People our age 100% did.
Yes. Only when she circled back did she realize her mistake. The pedestrian wasn't a boy, but a small man close to her age.
Oh.
He just had boyish characteristics and was dirty and strange. Even his clothes are weird, almost too plain, as if handmade. He tried to get into the car, but Mom kept it locked. She questioned him for a bit and learned he was an android trying to make his way back to the colony.
Okay.
Right? Okay. He explained there's a camp of homeless people, what he called vagrants, that were being reconfigured into androids. These androids weren't allowed to drive or interact with humans as a whole. That was not unless they became separated from the rest of the colony. This would stand out as a strange, if not for all the stories I've heard about this place. A ramshackle place with plywood buildings and other roadside trash coaxed into shelter. Cult and commune are the usual labels, and the word is they all dress exactly the same.
Did you pick him up?
I don't think so.
I would hope not.
I just got distracted by
Ugh.
the possible cult in the woods.
Yeah. Ugh.
And I was like, if I had time, I would do a deep dive on this. Because this is a crazy post.
We could come back to Colts in the Woods.
Yes. Maybe it's all bullshit and crazy.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Who's to say?
So this is by Malware 2018.
Oh, good. Okay.
I live in the mountains along the Appalachian Trail in the West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania area. They apparently all touch. The thing's right there.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Okay. Let's look at our map. All right. So West Virginia.
Well, yeah. So it's like up there.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
little part of Maryland that we said no one ever knows about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The app, they call it the AT, so that's what I'm going to say.
Oh, the Appalachian Trail.
Mhm.
AT. Okay.
Yeah. The AT winds all through the area with many parts of the trail being farm fields, backyards, etc. There is a brief spot at the back of our neighbor's field where hikers walk along the fence line. A few years ago, the neighbor was out working and he noticed a disheveled hiker standing at the fence. The neighbor said that they felt incredibly anxious as soon as he saw the hiker. The hiker looked disoriented and in a trance. He asked the hiker if he was okay and if they wanted snacks or supplies. The hiker was speaking nonsense about a group, a ritual, and the beings calling to him.
Oh, my God.
The neighbor tried to get more information, but the hiker became agitated and took off down the trail. The neighbor notified park services and police, but we have no idea what happened after that. Maybe mental illness, substances, medical emergency, etc. But the experience shook up our neighbor big time.
Ew.
After talking about the legends of wild men in these remote wilderness areas they supposedly call home, it feels like a good time to talk about something really important. Our national parks.
Oh, uh-huh.
These places, the forests, mountains, deserts, and wetlands, they're not just beautiful backdrops for spooky stories. They're some of the most important natural and cultural treasures we have. Our national parks protect wildlife, preserve history, and give us all a place to get out, explore, and reconnect with nature.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. They need our help. Parks across the country face threats like pollution, climate change, overcrowding, and most recently, funding shortages.
Uh-huh.
And even though they might seem wild and untouchable, they're surprisingly fragile. So if you love these wild places, whether you're out there hoping to spot Bigfoot or just looking for some peace and quiet, here are a few easy ways you can help. Visit responsibly. Stay on trails, pick up your trash, and always respect wildlife. Support park foundations. Donations help fund everything from trail maintenance to wildlife research. Volunteer if you can. A lot of parks have programs where you can help restore habitats or educate visitors. Speak up. Support policies that protect public lands and ensure our parks get the funding they need. And most importantly, share your love for these places. The more people care, the more we're likely to protect them. Whether you believe in the wild men or not, we can all agree these wild spaces are worth saving. So next time you're out in a national park, leave it a little better than you found it. And who knows, maybe you'll spot something strange out there too. In conclusion,
And then you can write to us about it.
oh yeah. Whether they're flesh and blood, myth, or a little bit of both, the legend of the wild men serves as a reminder that even in the modern world, some places remain untamed. And in those places, there are eyes watching, just beyond the firelight. So next time you're camping deep in the woods and you hear a twig snap in the darkness, ask yourself, is it just the wind? Or is it one of them?
Ew. That's so creepy, and I really love it. And I would choose the bear.
Yep, still choose the bear.
Ooh. Oh. I don't know why. I just have a love for creepy forests.
But I did a good job. I creeped you out.
Oh, yeah.
Yay!
And I hadn't heard those stories before, which is so exciting because, like I said, when I like something or something creeps me out, I will go full force into it and, like, do all my research and read all the stories about it. I haven't heard those before.
Yeah, and it's, like, part of his, like, 411
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yep.
So that's why I was like, I don't know, she's heard it.
The missing 411s. Yeah.
So,
Ugh. That, okay. The pound cake.
isn't that crazy?
First off, if it's a wild man, did they go into the city to get it? Second off.
Yeah, where did the pound cake come from? And does one have to do with the other? Or are they two
Right.
unrelated events?
And, like, if it was there, she's so far in the woods. How far is the nearest pound cake shop?
I wonder if it's like that third man syndrome you were talking about, but instead it's with food. But it's this, like, hallucination that she's eating pound cake.
Third cake.
Yeah, right. But it's, like, really, like, leaves or something, but she's so delirious and delusional.
Maybe. But whatever it was, it gave her enough substance to, like, make it.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Crazy.
So creepy. Oh, I loved it.
Well, good. I'm glad you loved it.
Oh, thank you. Loved it.
Gotta come in good for your birthday.
Great gift. Great gift.
What birthday tea you pouring, Lauren?
All right. So because you did forests, I did water.
Technically, you picked your topic first.
But it just worked out really nicely that I did water and you did forest.
Yes.
So I wanted to choose a diving disaster.
Of course.
So I'm doing the Plura Cave disaster.
Okay.
So we have to travel all the way over to Norway. Norway is a country in northern Europe known for its fjords, mountains, and outdoor activities. It is also a major producer of oil and natural gas.
Also, I know that the word fjord is like an insane spelling.
FJ.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. It's so fun to say, the fjords. So, because this took place in Norway, I do not speak Norwegian or Finnish or any of those languages. Please excuse my incorrect pronunciations of everything that happens in this story.
You're excused.
Thank you. And it's my birthday, so I get a pass.
Mhm.
So today we will be talking about Plura Cave. It is the deepest cave in northern Europe and the most popular cave diving destination in all of Scandinavia. And I'm Scandinavian. This fits so perfectly.
Me too.
Aw. The water temperature ranges from 36 degrees Fahrenheit, so 2 Celsius in the winter, and 44 degrees Fahrenheit, which is between 4 and 7 Celsius in the summer. So it's cold.
It's chilly.
So it was just after midnight when a group of 5 friends arrived at the Plura Cave. They had driven for 15 hours through Finland, Sweden, and Norway, making a stop in Tornio, Finland for supplies to include eggs and bacon. The 5 men were, Kai Kankanen, a 46-year-old electrical contractor from Vanta, Patrick Gronkovist, a 42-year-old fireman from Porvo, Jari Huotarinen, a 40-year-old production manager from Valkeakoski. That was way too many syllables in that. Vesa Rantanen, a 33-year-old electrical designer from Hämeenlinna, and Jari Usimaki, a 41-year-old mechanical engineer from Espoo. So yes, we have 2 Jaris, Jari H and Jari U.
Oh, good Lord.
The 5 men knew each other through different connections. Patrick, Kai, and Jari H had all spent a lot of time diving together. A few years earlier, Jari H. and Kai had made an unofficial Finnish record when they dove to the depth of 210 meters or 688 feet
Jesus.
in the Halvala Quarry in eastern Finland. The dive ended up being 8 hours. When they reached the surface, Jari H. had to be treated for severe decompression sickness in a recompression chamber in Helsinki, which we kind of talked about a little bit in our diving episode, where you have to make decompression stops as you go down.
Yeah.
You have to slowly come up, or the nitrogen and bubbles in your body
Yeah.
will go all crazy.
The
Listen to our
bend.
diving episode, and we go in way more into it. But so if that happens, you have to go into a decompression or a recompression chamber because the bends or decompression sickness can be fatal.
Yes.
So technical diving was pretty popular in Finland. Technical diving is scuba diving that goes beyond just recreational limits. So it involves diving deeper than 130 feet or 40 meters. It requires special training as divers are no longer able to just breathe in normal air. The air they breathe in instead is a mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium known as the trimix. But the cave diving community was much smaller due to the risks associated with it, and the whole group of 5 were part of the cave diving community. Kai actually had experience of how dangerous cave diving can be. Just a few years earlier, he and a longtime diving partner were doing a dive in the Mantola Quarry in Paiksamaki, central Finland. They were lowering their gear through a hole in the ice and into the water. When they were below the ice preparing for the dive, Kai looked over and realized that his partner was not wearing a mouthpiece. And they're underwater, so you need a mouthpiece. Immediately, Kai pushed his partner through the ice and began resuscitation. A rescue helicopter arrived 8 minutes later, but it was too late. His partner was gone.
8 minutes.
It was later determined that his partner had forgotten to open the oxygen valve of his rebreather and consequently breathed the oxygen poor mixture of nitrogen and helium. This really hit Kai hard, and he decided in that moment to give up diving. But it had lasted only a few months, as all of his friends were still diving. He just wasn't able to give it up. Then later that same year, Kai witnessed another fatal accident. He was in a group of 12 other Finnish divers. This group had included Patrick, Jari H., and Vesa, so 3 of the guys who were on this diving trip. As the large group was making their descent towards the shipwreck sited westerly from Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, they noticed one of the divers had disappeared. Immediately, authorities were called, but even rescue officials were unable to find the body of the diver. So Patrick, Jari H., and Vesa continued the search on their own. They did ultimately discover the body at a depth of 70 meters, so about 230 feet. All of the men were experienced technical divers and certified CCR full cave divers, so they have their shit together. They know exactly what they're doing. The 5 men had piled into Jari H.'s van, which had a trailer attached. The trailer was carrying a snowmobile, underwater scooters, a few dozen large diving cylinders, and other smaller equipment. All the things that the friends would need for their diving expedition. Road conditions the entire way weren't great, with it being quite slippery towards the end of their drive, but finally, at just past 1 in the morning on February 6th, 2014, the group arrived at the
You got it.
Jordbru Farm in Rana,
All
a
right.
municipality in the Norwegian county of Nordland. Kai was the one who had planned and organized the entire trip. It had originally been scheduled for January, but due to prior commitments by many in the group, they had rescheduled to this week in February. Kai and Patrick were the most experienced of the group. The 2 of them had been to Plura Cave before, so they knew it relatively well. There were 2 known entrances to the cave, and it was actually Kai and Patrick alongside another diver named Sami Pakarinian, not on this trip, who were the first to dive from one entrance to the other, discovering that the 2 entrances did connect.
Like the first ever?
Yeah, the first ever to realize that these 2 connected.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
This is what the cave diving community called a traverse, and it's actually a great accomplishment, especially in a new unmapped cave. The plan for this particular dive was to conduct only the second ever traverse between the 2 entrances. It would be the first going in both directions. So they would start at one side, swim over, so the way that they've done it before, and then swim back over.
Oh.
So they were going to go each direction. And this would be a difficult dive. First off, like I said, the cave wasn't well documented. Only once had it been fully gone through, the time that Kai and Patrick went. The cave also reaches depths of over 130 meters or 426 feet, which also makes this a very challenging dive. There are many tight squeezes and cold water to add to all of that. The water is actually so cold that the divers have to wear very specific suits and thermals under their suits.
Oh, wow.
A cut in the suit would end up being fatal. That's how cold this water is.
Wow.
This is a very difficult dive, and not many people would have even thought about attempting it. The plan was to descend into the cave through the entrance, which was located in a pond. So you have to go into the pond, go underwater, and then enter the cave. Ew. They would then dive.
Sorry.
They would then dive 2,036 meters or 6,680 feet to the other entrance. So that's how long the whole thing is.
Okay.
This entrance was located roughly 100 meters or 328 feet below the surface of the earth in the dry but difficult to reach cave Steinagolflaget.
Oh, Right.
So you come out on the other side and you're in a cave, and then you climb out of the cave to get up to the surface.
Oh.
Also, ew. After their dive, they would leave their equipment in Steinolugflaget,
You just say the cave.
the S cave. They would stay the night at the Jordbrun farm, then come back the next day and dive back.
Mhm.
So they carried their equipment from the van into the garage to the farm to make sure that it wouldn't be freezing come morning time, and they would all be ready to go.
And can they I'm assuming they can do one side to the other in a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about a 5-hour dive.
Okay.
Yeah. Jari H turned in almost immediately, while the others each had 1 beer to end the night. It is advised that on the night before a dive, you shouldn't have any more than just 1 beer. They also decided to sleep in until 8, as it was also important to be well rested before a long dive.
Fair.
In addition to Kai and Patrick, Jari H and Vesa had been to Plura Cave, though they had never ventured deep into it yet. They had stayed in the more shallow area of the cave, a place where novice divers usually hang out. Jari Yu was the only one who didn't have any prior experience of the cave, though he had dived in numerous quarries and caves in Finland and other areas. But Jari Yu was a deliberate and careful diver who never rushed into action, so he was ready to take on the deep and challenging cave. So the day of the dive, the sun finally broke above the fells, just a fancy word, at about 9 a.m. that morning. Today, February 6th, would have about 7 hours of sunlight, and it would be a bright, clear, and cold day.
7 hours of sunlight. Oh my God.
At -3 degrees Celsius
No.
or 26 degrees Fahrenheit, the water was just below freezing.
That's so chilly.
The morning had started with Patrick heading out to examine the ice conditions at the pond where they would start their dive. Jari was in the kitchen cooking porridge for everyone. After everyone was awake and had eaten, they split up into 2 groups. So
Was it not too hot and not too cold?
it was just right. Group 1 was made up of Kai, Vesa, and Jari Yu. They took the equipment needed down to the S cave. Group 2 was Patrick and Jari H, who were to cut a hole in the ice with a chainsaw.
And I doubt you know the answer to this question, but in your research, did it explain why they chose to go when it was fucking freezing and not when it was a bit warmer out?
No, they wanted it to be in January. That didn't work out with people's schedules, so they chose February.
Like, why so fucking cold?
I could not tell you.
That seems so much harder.
It really does, actually.
Like, unnecessarily.
But yeah, I could not tell you. They didn't give any explanation for why.
Okay.
They might have I'll get to something else that it's included in, but I didn't watch that. So Jari H hauled a sledge full of equipment onto the ice at the spot where he would begin cutting. The ice was very thick, though, and it took a bit of work to even get the chainsaw blade through it.
See, that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
why would you choose to go during that time?
No idea.
It's crazy.
Maybe it's just always that cold in Finland.
Can't be that cold all the time. It's not the North Pole. It's close, but like.
When they finally broke through the ice and splashed water, it melted the snow covering the ice. Jari and Patrick witnessed a beautiful sight. The water was crystal clear, and it was possible to make out the rocky bottom of the pond.
Maybe that's why.
Maybe it has something to do with the water
Yeah.
content.
And like, because I guess maybe in the springtime, if there's more algae and stuff, because
Oh,
plants are blooming.
maybe. But I don't think there's any like wildlife in this water.
Not in the water, but I just mean like the surrounding areas.
Maybe. So the 2 got to work assembling their gear, exchanging a few words here and there. The whole preparation was being recorded on a camcorder, so there was a part that shows Patrick pointing the camcorder at Jari H, who was sitting on the bank of the pond, fully ready for a dive. "What do you think? Should we wait or go?" asked Patrick. Jari H is seen in the camcorder gesturing down with his right hand. "I agree," said Patrick. So Patrick walks to the hole and puts the camcorder under the water to show how clear it is, and I did watch this video. It is very, very clear.
No, that's cool.
Where at times you could probably forget you're underwater.
Wow.
It's very pretty. So Group 2, made up of Jari H and Patrick, got into the water below the ice and made their way to the entrance of the cave using underwater scooters at about midday on Thursday, February 6th.
So did the other 2 go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're doing it in 2 separate groups, and I'll explain why in a second.
Okay.
So they determined the dive would take about 5 hours. Not only did the scooter help them move faster, but the scooters also helped the divers conserve their strength.
Yeah.
They were also using rebreathers for their dive. So a rebreather is a closed circuit piece of equipment which recycles exhaled oxygen. So it adds oxygen to the air and absorbs the carbon dioxide. It also helps save oxygen, which can then multiply the dive time.
Yeah.
So for example, a normal oxygen bottle would last about a couple of minutes at a depth of 100 meters or 328 feet. The rebreather would make it last for hours. So with the rebreather, divers need fewer gas cylinders. They can fit through smaller openings as they have less equipment on them, and they can stay submerged for notably longer amounts of time than if they used an open circuit system.
Okay.
But with anything, there are risks associated with each. For example, risks with rebreathers include hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen that can lead to confusion, unconsciousness, and
I was
drowning.
going to say, I feel like there's got to be something with the carbon dioxide.
Hyperoxia, which is too much oxygen, which can lead to convulsions and unconsciousness. Hypercapnia, which is a buildup of carbon dioxide. Flooding, which can cause chemical burns. So I guess that's when the chemicals kind of all. And then just equipment failure.
Mm.
And it can also lead to complacency, exceeding depth limits, and pushing divers too far too soon because they kind of feel more invincible. You are looking way too comfortable right now.
I'm so tired.
Chug your coffee.
Oh, okay. You're right. I gotta sit up, or else I will fall asleep to the sound of your lovely voice.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, your eyes were like.
Not that it's not an interesting story. It is, but like, oh,
I have a soothing voice. I get it.
ready.
Patrick and Jari H. were both well trained on rebreathers. Patrick had used his first rebreather 9 years ago. Jari got his 7 years ago. But because they were well trained, they had devised a bailout or reserve gas strategy just in case.
And were these the two guys that went first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The ones who cut in with the chainsaw. So they carried a third rebreather system, an open circuit gas cylinder, just in case their primary equipment failed. So if their rebreather wasn't working for some reason or anything, they had this other oxygen just in case.
Okay.
About 2 hours later, the other group, Kai, Vesa, and Jari H. entered the water. So
it's like 2 and 3, right? Because there's 5.
Mhm.
Okay.
So the plan had been that the second group would wait enough time that if the first group had kicked up any silt or anything, it would settle within 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they would enter after the first group, just to make sure that everything had settled, everything was good before they came in.
But is there a reason why the whole group just didn't go together?
I don't know. That wasn't mentioned, but it could be just too many people because it's a very small, tight cave system.
I wonder if there's like safety, like if you go in groups, like if something happens, the group coming behind.
Potentially.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not cave diving certified and never will I be. So entering the cave, it gradually descends to a depth of 34 meters over the first 500 meters of the cave. I kept it in meters because the story was in Finland.
Say that again?
So it gradually descends to a depth of 34 meters over the first 500 meters of the cave.
Okay.
So you're swimming 500 meters in and you're going down 34 meters.
That doesn't seem too far for...
Not yet.
Yeah.
But
like for how far you're going and then how deep it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It then ascends briefly to a 250 meter long barren chamber. This chamber is only partly filled with water, so it acts as an air chamber. While this whole dive is dangerous, this part of the cave is typically suitable for less experienced divers. Once a wedding was held here, and even a concert, as it is relatively easy for a novice diver to get here without much difficulty. Yeah, no. So sometimes it's called the wedding chamber instead of the air chamber. Yeah, I hate it. So after the air chamber, the cave...
Hopefully a small ceremony.
It wasn't too many people. No. Again, I saw a picture. After the air chamber, the cave descends again, but this descent is pretty steep. First reaching a depth of 60 meters, then 100, then finally 130 meters. These depths are determined and measured from the entrance of the cave. So that's how we have measured how far it goes down.
Okay.
Only experienced divers should even attempt to enter this section. The openings are very narrow, and they often require a diver to use their hands to edge their way through. Divers also have to be very careful about not hitting the sharp walls, which could easily cut open a suit, and the water temperature, how cold it is, like I said, could be deadly. Patrick and Jari H. reached this section of the cave, the air chamber, with no issues, having used their scooters the whole way. When they got to this part, they turned off their scooters so they could admire the cave for a bit. This is also where they wanted to practice switching out regulators. Patrick had agreed with Jari H. that he would practice switching to the bailout rebreather in this depth. So it's important to practice this. If there's an issue with the rebreather or you start breathing too fast, the rebreather is unable to clean out the carbon dioxide quickly enough and replace with oxygen. So if this happens, it's important to be able to switch to the reserve to get the oxygen from the bat as the rebreather's kind of figuring itself out. So he attempted the switch. It was successful. He used his reserve for a few minutes and switched back, also a success. So he's like, cool, I can do this if I need to. After they took in all that they wanted to take in the air chamber, they continued on. This passage begins to ascend.
Question.
Yeah.
It was Patrick and Kai that did it first?
I think so. Let me see. Yes. Yep. Patrick and Kai were the two who had done the whole thing first.
And they split up?
No, when they did it together, they were together.
Right. Sorry. I mean now.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I thought. That's smart.
Yeah, I agree. So they split up. Vesa, who was in the group with Kai, he had also been to the cave before, but he had never, done deep diving. Jari Yu is with the other group. So 2 people who have been in the cave. Jari Yu has never been in the cave before, so he's with them.
Mhm.
Jari H has been in this cave, not the whole thing, and he's with Patrick.
Okay.
So the passage begins to ascend, and at one point it makes a 90-degree turn right while it continues to ascend. So this part is pretty narrow, so Patrick went through first. As he made it out of the narrow section, he turned around to watch for Jari H, but he realized he couldn't see Jari's light. He turned around and waited. Then he did see Jari's light, but it was waving up and down, which is a sign that divers use to indicate distress.
Mm-mm.
Divers are able to talk to an extent while underwater, which I thought was very interesting. I don't know how it works, but they're able to talk underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And Jari yelled out to Patrick to come back. He asked Patrick to detach one of his large bailout cylinders, which had gotten in the way and was caught on something. Patrick immediately went back to help Jari, but he was having a really hard time doing so. Patrick had to move his own scooter out of the way to even try to get Jari free, so he had to leave the narrow passage to move the scooter. Patrick had to keep telling Jari to calm down. He would be back in just a couple of seconds, and he would be back. Patrick came back and moved the cylinder out of the way. The thought that then crossed his mind was that maybe Jari himself was stuck and that he should pull him out with force. But Patrick decided against that as he didn't want to induce panic in Jari. Looking closer at him, Patrick soon realized that Jari's scooter was stuck as well. Jari tried yanking it free by force. Once it was free, Patrick moved it out of the way so they could continue on. At this point, they were 111 meters below the surface. Jari was starting to panic and called out to Patrick to give him the open circuit bailout gas. He was breathing too fast that the rebreather wasn't able to keep up. That is when Patrick knew that they were in a serious situation, so he handed Jari the mouthpiece of his own bailout cylinder. Jari took a few breaths, maybe about 10, before switching back to his rebreather. They repeated this process 2 or 3 times. At one point during this, Patrick realized that Jari had nothing in his mouth, so he placed a diving regulator over his mouth and pressed the purge button. That is when the unthinkable happened. Jari inhaled water. This was all it took for Jari to die in the underwater cave. Patrick clung to a rock, trying to pull himself together and slow down his fast breathing. Patrick was a rescue diver. He had seen dozens of dead bodies in the water of divers who he was recovering. He had seen dying patients in ambulances, but Jari had been his friend and he had never seen a friend die. Patrick knew he had to keep going, though. He had to make his way out of the cave, but due to his depth, he knew he would have to make some decompression stops along the way. Ascending to the surface too quickly without these stops can result in decompression sickness or the bends, which can be fatal. Patrick looked at his dive computer, which helped measure the depth and time of the dive to determine the number and duration of decompression stops required for a safe ascent. Moments before the incident, his dive computer was saying that he would need to remain in the water for 120 minutes, so about 2 hours to avoid the bends. But now, Patrick stared at his computer in absolute disbelief. His dive computer was saying that in order for him to avoid the bends, he would have to remain in the water for 400 minutes, which is close to 7 hours.
What?
He tried to think how this was possible. He tried to think back to how long he had spent at this depth, 15 minutes, maybe 20. Every minute spent at a depth of 110 meters and pressure of 12 bars, which I don't get, but we're really low, adds over 10 minutes to the duration of the dive. So if you're in there for 10 minutes, you've added 100 minutes of your dive, like 100 minutes of decompression to your dive.
Oh, wow.
Yep. There was no way that Patrick could swim back to tell the others of what was happening, as that way was now blocked.
By
Jari.
Yeah.
It also started to dawn on Patrick the real danger he was in. The dive was supposed to last 5 hours, but now having to add in that stop would make it 8 to 9. He had his bailout system, but Jari H had the oxygen cylinder. He also had already offered a lot of his bailout to Jari, so Patrick knew he was running low on air already. He knew he didn't have much time, and he had to try to get out, so he began swimming towards the exit of the cave. During the swim, he kept thinking of his friends, who in just 2 hours would reach the body of Jari H. He was afraid they would all die and he would be alone. Driving Jari's van back to Finland alone, having to tell the families of his friends what happened, and having to live with the unbelievable grief. So at around 2:20 p.m., the other group, made up of Kai, Vesa, and Jari Yu, entered the cave, lowering themselves into the water one by one. They had agreed to enter the cave 2 hours after Patrick and Jari H in order to allow any loose sediment to settle back down again. Vesa went first, followed by Jari H, then Kai. They reached the air chamber about 20 minutes later and reached the steep descent about 10 minutes after that. They were moving a bit slower than Kai had during his first dive, as he decided to bring along more oxygen just as a precaution. As the group was at roughly 125 meters, Vesa got stuck sliding through an opening that was less than 1 meter high. He was able to remove some cylinders and make his way through. Then his fin got caught on the guideline. Jari H helped him untangle it, and they kept moving forward. The article I read then said, Don Javla fin. I looked in Google what this translated to, and in Swedish it said, the damn pimple.
What?
Which I didn't think was right, so then I tried Finnish, and it means, damn it, fin, because his fin got stuck.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny. So Kai was getting annoyed, though. Just 5 additional minutes at this depth meant that they would also need to add about 1 hour to their decompression stops. So he's kind of annoyed that they're taking long because it means longer to decompress.
Yeah.
As he kept swimming, Kai started to hear a beep. This is a beep that a diver never wants to hear. It is the distress signal of a breathing apparatus. That is when Kai saw him, his friend Jari H. Vessa was right behind, got ahead of Kai, and immediately noticed that Jari H was no longer alive. He knew he had to find a way around and instantly started to try to find a way Jari H. He began to take off his gear to try to fit through the tight squeeze. He called back behind him, telling the two behind him, Kari and Jari U, that Jari H was dead and that he was going to have to find a way around, but it didn't look good. So this part was confusing to me, so I'll read it exactly how it was explained in the article I read, and it was a dynamic article, which we'll have in our show notes.
Mm-hmm.
So, quote, this is from the article. What exactly happened next remains unclear. Kai has no distinct recollection of the events due to shock and nitrogen necrosis, but as he caught up with Jari H, something was apparently amiss. Kai tried to appease Jari U by pointing his light at the guideline. I asked what's the matter. He yelled something, but I couldn't make out what. Kai had yet to learn about the fate of Jari H, but had Jari U seen the body and decided to turn back? Jari U was swinging perpendicularly and switched from the closed circuit system to his bailout system. I tried to calm him down by talking to him. I made sure that he wasn't trapped and that the bailout gas was on. I was flabbergasted, Kai said. As the situation continued, I realized it couldn't be a failure in the rebreather. There was nothing he could do, and moments later, Jari was dead.
What?
Yeah.
What?
That's why I was kind of confused. But how I took that was Jari U was trying to get Jari H out of the way. As he did it, something happened, and he's switching from his rebreather to his oxygen. Something happened with that, and he didn't make it.
Well, goddamn.
Kai knew he had to keep moving. This was when he noticed the body of Jari Yu, and right next to Jari Yu's body was Vessa, kicking furiously to get around. Kai shouted up to Vessa that Jari Yu was also dead. He bellowed that they should turn back. Vessa didn't want to turn back. That way was much longer than what they had left. His exact situation was starting to get to him, and his breathing quickened. Kai immediately noticed that Vessa was panicking, which you can't do with these depths.
Yeah.
Kai knew he had to make a decision. He didn't think Vessa would be able to find a way around Jari Yu. He also presumed that since Jari H was dead, that Patrick was also probably dead. So Kai turned back around alone and went the way he had come in. As Kai was making his way back to the entrance of the cave, he was more than sure that his friends were dead. This made him look at his situation and what his chances of survival were. He determined that they were slim. He had 2 rebreathers, but only a little bit of additional oxygen. One of the bailout cylinders was only suitable for deeper parts of the cave, so wouldn't be used during the ascent. His first decompression stop would have to be made at a depth of roughly 100 meters, but the stop needed to be no longer than 1 minute at each depth, but that would become longer as he continued to ascend. He started to steadily ascend, ignoring the dive computer telling him that he had to stop for another hour to decompress. But Kai was more focused on getting to the surface. He estimated that he was more likely to run out of oxygen than to develop decompression sickness, so he kept skipping many of the decompression stops. He finally reached the air chamber where he could breathe normal air to conserve his oxygen. He debated if he should just stay here and wait for rescue, but if his group was dead, no one would know that he was there, and there would be no way to know when a rescue team would come, if ever, so he decided to continue on. He had estimated it would take him 15 minutes to get from the air pocket to the surface, but when his scooter broke down, it ended up taking him 45 minutes. He knew he just had to keep swimming and make it to the surface. He was thinking how, if the concentration of oxygen in the breathing gas was insufficient, the gas would become hypoxic, and he would gradually lose consciousness and ultimately drown, but he kept swimming. As Patrick was ascending, safely making his decompression stops, he had plenty of time to think of his friends. The friends he was sure had died in the cave below him. He thought back to their drinking sprees. He thought of his family. He swam around in circles, scared that...
So this is the 2 guys that made it the first time.
Yes.
Interesting.
Scared that none of his friends would make it out alive. But what Patrick didn't know was that Vessa was making his own decompression stops below him. As he was thinking and waiting, he saw a light below him. Vessa was able to tell Patrick that the others had turned back. So Vessa thinks that Jari Yu and Kai turned around.
Oh, he didn't realize he was dead.
Kai thinks that Jari H, who was dead, Jari Yu and Vessa had died.
Yeah.
And he thinks that because Jari H had died, Patrick had died.
Dead.
So Kai thinks he's all alone.
Yeah.
Patrick thinks he's all alone.
Until?
Because he thinks that the 3 other guys got trapped where Jari H is and didn't make it.
Yeah.
And then he sees Vessa.
Okay.
So now he knows Vessa's alive. Vessa told him that they know about Jari H, but he's like, Jari Yu and Kai turned around.
Oh, God.
So Vessa was able to tell Patrick that the others had turned back. Patrick said it gave him the strength he needed to continue to the surface. A little after 9 p.m., Patrick finally rose to the surface, half an hour before it was technically safe for him to do so. Instead of the originally planned 5 hours, his dive had took 8.5. He climbed out of the water and sat inside the cave in S, waiting for Vessa to finish his decompression stops, which would still be another over 2 hours. Vessa was only 6 meters from the surface at this point and could see Patrick's headlight as he sat there waiting. When Vessa was at 3 meters, his arms began to ache, which he feared and presumed was a sign of decompression sickness, which it is. Finally, Vessa surfaced nearly 90 minutes before it was safe for him to do so. It was around now that Patrick's right knee began to ache. So both Vessa and Patrick are feeling aches, which are not good.
Yeah.
3 hours later, Kai emerged from the entrance of the cave the way they had entered, into the pond. He aimed his light at the layer of ice above him, looking for the dive hole, but he couldn't find it. All he could see was ice. The dive hole they had cut in the morning had frozen back over.
No.
Thankfully, after some searching, he did find the original hole. It was covered by roughly 1 centimeter of ice, and he was able to break it and push his gear out before climbing out himself.
Oh my God.
It was past 1 in the morning when he got out, and he didn't see anyone else. His dive had lasted 11 and a half hours.
Jesus.
Patrick and Vessa waited at the farm for a bit before returning to the pond, the one that Kai had climbed out of. They had no idea anyone had exited, so they waited, hoping against hope that they would see the light of one of their friends. After about an hour of waiting, their hope was gone, and they finally reached out to the Norwegian authorities. It was close to 2 in the morning when they made their way back to their van, but they noticed that someone had turned the van's lights on, someone who wasn't one of them. Patrick and Vessa ran to the van and found Kai lying on the ground, like on the floor of the van. Not realizing it was actually Patrick and Vessa, Kai told these 2 people who he thought were just natives that he was the only one who made it out of the cave. So he's so delirious and just out of it that he doesn't realize it's Patrick and Vessa. And he's like, I'm the only one who made it, not knowing he was talking to his friends.
Yeah.
News quickly spread of the 2 Finnish divers who had died in the cave and 3 who had been hospitalized. An investigation was launched in which Patrick, Kai, and Vessa were interrogated about the incident, and Vessa's interrogation was conducted while in a recompression chamber in Bergen, Norway.
Oh my God.
Local authorities also wanted to find a way to recover the bodies, so they asked 3 experienced British divers to try. In February of 2015, the rescue divers entered the cave from the S entrance and tried to dislodge the bodies. No matter how much they tried, they weren't able to dislodge the bodies, and when they returned to the surface, they said it was too dangerous of an operation to carry out. Because of this,
They're just like stuck? Like in like a...
It's a very narrow opening, and they were stuck there, and it's too dangerous for the rescue divers to try to get them out at that point.
Yeah.
Because of all of this, officials decided to leave the bodies there in the cave and imposed a diving ban. They also closed the area to visitors.
Wow.
It was March 26th, springtime in Plura. A group of 10 divers gathered at the S cave. They held a moment of silence for Jari U and Jari H. Patrick, Vessa, and Kai knew that they would return to come back and get their friends one day. The decision had been made shortly after the Norwegian authorities had decided to leave the bodies in the cave. Patrick had sent a text message to a group of his friends asking if they wanted to participate in a recovery mission of their own. Everyone replied yes. Kai was nervous, though. Since the incident, he had not been diving. He had even sworn that he would never put his head underwater again.
Oh, wow.
And Vessa was not allowed to dive due to the decompression sickness he had experienced after their last dive. The decompression sickness had caused tingling all over his body, difficulty walking, and problems with his reflexes. But he needed to be there, so he offered to assist from land.
Like permanent damage?
I'm not sure if it's permanent, but this was a whole month later, and he's still, like, not doing okay. I think he's okay in the future.
That's good.
Yeah. So the group had to make sure to keep their plan quiet and on the down low as to make sure that the authorities didn't find out.
Would you come save me if I died and got stuck in a cave?
We would never be there in the first place, but yes.
Okay.
If you were stuck in like an elevator, I'd come get you.
Oh, okay. That's so nice.
Well, I love you.
And if I got out, you would scold me about taking an elevator.
Oh, God, you know I would.
I'm so glad you're okay, but this is why we don't do this.
So to prepare for recovery, the divers went into the cave and strategically placed 26 bailout cylinders inside the cave starting from each entrance.
Wow.
They also made an underwater habitat, which is a device that allows divers to take a break in a little shelter during decompression stops.
Nice.
It can be stocked with food and water and air.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can be like...
Why didn't they do this in the first place?
I don't think they needed it. They didn't think that they would need it.
That's true.
The rescue ended up being successful with Patrick and Sammy Pakarinen, who I mentioned earlier, being the 2 to actually recover the bodies. The whole rescue operation had taken 101 hours of diving time. The next morning, Sammy called the authorities and told them what they had done. That they had recovered...
Ask for forgiveness.
Yes. That they had recovered the bodies and that they were now in the S cave. He asked,
Because the area is still banned from going, right?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
So this was an illegal dive.
Yeah.
He asked if they, the authorities, would now be able to transport the bodies out of the difficult-to-reach cave.
Yeah.
So they were like, we got them out of here. We need your help to get them out of the cave. So the operation received a lot of media attention. Although the bodies had been retrieved against official orders, the action of the divers did not come under criticism.
No.
It did not come under criticism.
Yeah, I'm like agreeing.
Yeah. Actually, as they were carrying their gear out of the cave, roughly a dozen local residents came to help them.
Oh.
The owner of the farm even heated up the sauna for them, of the barn, even heated up the sauna for them to warm up and get dry.
Oh.
The bodies of Jari H and Jari U were transported back to Finland where their funerals would take place. Patrick was actually a pallbearer in one of the
Oh,
funerals.
I'm gonna start crying.
I know. The group had to wait 6 months before being cleared of any charges for performing the illegal dive, then another 6 months before the group was told that they would not face any charges at all.
Good for them.
Finland's president later awarded Patrick the First Class Medal of the White Rose of Finland. This is one of the 3 official orders of Finland and is rewarded for extraordinary merit.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. It had been 2 months and 3 weeks since the incident in Plura Cave when Patrick, Kai, and Vessa were preparing for another dive. This was scheduled to be a 2-week diving trip in Spain and France. This trip had been planned for a while, and they almost called it off after the incident in Plura, but decided to continue on anyways. They would be exploring the Pozo Azul cave. Cave divers have explored the cave since the 1970s, discovering a passage over 9 kilometers into the depths of the mountains. No one has ventured deeper. Which, I assume, with it saying that, means they're going to try. So 4 people have died in Plura Cave since its discovery in 1980. Our 2 Finnish divers in 2014, one in 2024 on April 3rd, and another, the first, was a Norwegian man in 2006. You can watch the documentary Diving into the Unknown about the whole Plura Cave incident, complete with recordings inside the cave and interviews with the divers.
Wow.
And that is the Plura Cave incident.
Wow. You did a good job.
Thank you.
I like it felt like we were there with them.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was like a good perspective.
Oh, but terrifying.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Terrifying.
As you could see by my and my jaw drop. Which I think that's why because it's like I'm with you,
Yes.
you know.
And
Amazing.
one of the articles I was reading, it had videos in it,
Mhm.
in the article. So I could see when they were cutting the ice and I could see when he was dropping the equipment in to start in the pond. It was just weird.
Yeah.
And then you can see the cave that you have. So, like I said, you enter one entrance through the pond
Mhm.
and one entrance is through a cave. And it's a dry cave. So you go into the cave and then the water's there. And that's kind of where you start your dive
Yeah.
at.
So it's like an underwater, like a lake in a cave kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I watched a video of them going into the cave. No. Every little bit that he would go down, I was like, you can't fit. And then he would fit. And I was like, that can't be the entrance. It's the freaking entrance. Oh my God.
And are these little tubes, like a tunnel
in
kind
the
of thing?
cave?
Yeah, when they're traveling
Yeah.
from one spot to another.
Yeah. It's more like kind of a bit. I'll show you the article before we finish
Okay.
because it's actually pretty interesting.
I mean, when I do the episode pictures, I always go to the cited. We're excited to get pictures.
Okay. So yeah, the first thing that will be in my works cited.
Yeah.
Watch the videos.
Okay.
And it has pictures of the cave. So everyone listening too, if you go to our works cited, which is in our show notes, you can go to our works cited page. You can see all of the links that we use for every single episode.
Yep.
It's going to be the very first link in mine for this episode. It has pictures of the cave and kind of shows what it looks like and shows where everyone was getting stuck and shows everything.
Perfect. Oh my God. Episode pictures done.
Yeah. So it's perfect for that.
Yeah.
One of the other articles a little bit further down on my list shows some of the divers.
Oh, okay.
So it's an interview with them and it shows what they looked like.
Love that.
But yeah.
Wow.
Terrifying.
Because when I went in a cave, we only had granted, it was so long ago, and I only focused on the funny parts of that story. So really, there's good chunks of it I don't remember. But I do remember
the trauma response.
Yeah, right. There was one part we had to we kind of when you first enter, it's an incline, and you're just in this hole, and then you climb out of the hole and you crawl, hands and knees crawl through this tunnel thing.
No.
And then when you get out of that, then it's more open. And I think we just could walk. I highly doubt we went that far in.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there was other little rooms, we had the pancake room,
right,
and things like that. And so I only recall ever having to do that once. And so that's why when we talk about these diving stories and they talk about where they get stuck and things like that, I'm imagining an opening where there's a bunch of space, and then to get to the next part.
And a hole kind of to get through.
Right. And then there's a hole, and you have to go through that hole to get to the next part.
Jacob's Well that I talked about in Texas, 100% how it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
You have a little opening, and then each chamber is a little
Maybe that's why I think of it.
I hate the word, but it's like a shaft to get down to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was Jacob as well. This one, I'll show you a picture once we're done recording, and
Okay.
we'll have that in, like, I'm sure what you'll put for social media.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see they're not big open areas. It's like very small, like kind of tunnels. Like
Okay.
picture a storm drain,
Yeah.
like one that you can walk through. That's kind of the size.
Oh, that's bigger than I thought, though.
It's bigger than you thought, but it's still very small to be hundreds of meters underground.
Right. Right. Okay.
But
All right.
yeah. So the Plura Cave Incident.
There's a lot of things I want to try to do in life. I wouldn't mind snorkeling,
Snorkeling is fine. I could snorkel. I have snorkeled.
and I wouldn't mind scuba diving if it's like a coral reef kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
where you're far down but not like
Yeah, you
you
don't have
know?
to do the trimix of anything. It's just normal oxygen.
And
You're
just
just
like
breathing normally.
yeah, and like
If you
that
start
kind of thing.
hyperventilating, you're going to be okay. You could
Right.
swim up to the surface quick enough.
Like I think I'd be okay with doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything more than that though.
Yeah.
Cuz like obviously not a new fact, afraid of heights. But like when I see those pictures of like the open ocean and a person is just like chilling,
Mm-hmm.
it gives me the same kind of anxiety as if they would be up on a tall building.
Isn't that like trusselophobia or something like that? It's like the
I
fear
don't
of the open ocean.
Yeah, it's just like the idea that like there's all this space
Underneath you. Yeah.
Not that you're necessarily going to fall,
Mm-hmm.
obviously,
Right.
but it's just like there's so much under there, and it's like the cover of Jaws the movie. It kind of freaks me out a little bit because like she's just floating, and obviously it's meant to freak you out. I get that, but like it's shit like that where it's just like open water, nothing underneath you.
I think you have the trusselophobia or whatever it is.
I'm sure I do. Like I could never like. Not that this ever happens, but like on a cruise or like if for whatever reason I find a rich friend or marry a rich husband or whatever, have a secret rich uncle or aunt,
Right. Yeah.
and I get a yacht
Mm-hmm.
and I go sailing
Mm-hmm.
or whatever yachts do, and you're like kind of like in the middle of the ocean, I don't think I could jump in.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think I could either. There's just
Like,
too much unknown underneath me.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree with that.
Like,
I don't think I could
even-
do it either.
Even when like because my dad used to live like right next to like, he lives on a lake essentially. And we would take like our neighbor's boat out and like do all that kind of good stuff in the summer. Even then, like I could jump into the water, but like I was kicking real fucking fast to get back on to like the raft or the boat or
Yeah.
whatever. So it was like very like temporary.
Yeah.
So I do wish that there was some things about me that stayed brave. Like when I was little, there was just some shit I was never afraid of. And
Well,
now all
because
of a
when you're
sudden-
little, you don't know that it's dangerous and that fear hasn't like kicked in yet.
I think that's why I avoid certain movies and certain things like that, because I know how much stuff sticks in my mind. And so it's like the issue with Jaws is not necessarily getting eaten by a shark.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is that I can't see.
Yeah. No, I get that.
And so that became more prevalent after watching that movie.
Okay. Because it wasn't a fear that you knew you had until you found something that made you have that fear.
And so I was like, oh shit, yeah, you don't know what's underneath you.
Good point, TV or
Mhm.
movie.
Yeah, so that's why I like am very careful, because I'm like, can live in this ignorance about whatever it is.
They do say ignorance is bliss.
It is. The thing with the movie last night, though, is that I was never going to go into a gorge anyway. So
Right. And you're never going to zip line across one.
hell no.
So, like,
The last time I went on a zip line, the only reason I went is because it started thunderstorming, and I'm more afraid of those and being outside than I am of the heights of the zip line.
right. See, so things that forced you to do that. He just did it for love.
Yeah, I know. Ladies, my suggestion is don't watch this movie with your man, because if he wanted to, he would.
Yeah.
And Miles Teller did. And if that's not the kind of love I get, I don't want it.
If you wouldn't zip line across the gorge of scary people for me, I don't want you.
Yeah.
I should have asked Joe last night and started a fight. Started a fight. Start a fault.
Start a fault.
I'll start a fault.
Yeah.
But yeah, perfect birthday episode. The two
Yeah,
things
that
that
was
terrified
good.
me the most.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good story.
It was. Thank you.
I knew I wasn't going to fall asleep.
You were just looking way too comfy
I
over
was
there.
so fucking comfortable. Oh my God. I had like because like this is an itchy pillow.
Yeah.
And so my head was slightly turned. So putting my blanket underneath there
Oh,
was
yeah.
soft. And I was like, oh, this is so dangerous, but I'm so comfortable.
So you totally could have fallen asleep on these beanbags last night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm tired enough that I almost fell asleep on you last night.
I know.
I never worked so hard in my life. I think that's partially why I turned over too. I was like, let me face her.
Or I will fall asleep. Yeah, when you
Yes.
faced me, I was like, oh yeah, she's ready for the talks.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I can keep my eyes closed. That's okay. And like my thought process too was I was like, this is her time to shine. I literally am too tired to speak. I gotta let her ramble. This never happens. So like this is her moment. This is always her moment. When I'm sleepy, she gets to just ramble her thoughts, and I need to let her ramble her thoughts because she doesn't get to do that regularly.
Oh, I know. I did notice that. I was like, man, she's let me talk a lot.
Yeah, because that's the key. You got to get me super sleepy. But those, okay, we're rambling. They don't need to hear this part of the story.
So thank you for listening to my birthday episode.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So stay scary.
Stay safe.